Morena koutou, and welcome to the first council meeting of 2025 and the first council meeting in the new chambers in the Dennebrooke Concert chambers of the Dennebrooke Town Hall. Before we start the meeting, I'll just start with a minute's silence, if I could, for the passing of Dave Kirk, who served the Ponga rural community as its police officer for many years. Thank you, councillors. Right, I'll open with our council prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask for wisdom, discernment and your favour as we deliberate on the business of council. Bless our meeting as we work together to improve the lives of the people we serve. We meet to improve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Right. Councillors, are there any apologies? No? There's no one here for public forum. Notification of items not on the agenda. I do have one, councillors, and that is to appoint myself and Councillor Kerry Sutherland to the Advisory Oversight Group of Wairarapa Tararua Water. The reason that this is not on the agenda is that the first meeting of the Advisory Oversight Group was only held yesterday, and other councils have already put this into their minutes and given those delegated authorities. So we'll have a quick paper coming later for that. Can I have somebody move that we accept that as a late item? Councillor Peter Weber, seconder. Councillor Wallace, all those in favour please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Declarations of conflicts of interest regarding to today's meeting? There are none. Confirmation of the minutes. Can I have somebody move that those are a true and correct record? Moved Councillor Franklin, seconded Councillor Sutherland. All those in favour please say aye. We'll run through that. Page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, 13, 14, and page 15. Thank you, councillors. Could I have somebody move the minutes of the Positively Woodville Community Committee meeting be received as a true and correct record? Councillor Gilmore, seconded. Councillor Johns, all those in favour please say aye. Just run through those. Page 16, page 17, page 18, page 19. Thank you. And the minutes of the Dennebrooke Community Board be received. Can I have somebody move those? Councillor Petty Weber, seconded. I'm happy to move that. All those in favour please say aye. Against? Carried. Page 20, page 21, page 22, page 23, page 24, and page 25. Thank you. Right, moving into reports. Carter, if you want to come through, we've got item 9.1, the section 17A review of the camping grounds. And I think joining us online we have Jane Wright and David Pettigrew from Exist.
Your Worship, Councillors, good morning. So I'm here to present a report about the findings from the Section 17A reviews for the camping grounds. So we take the reports as read, and we have Brendan, we should have Brendan for the camping grounds, and David online to answer any of your specific questions. Just to reiterate, the review is about how we are performing our services, and the focus was mainly on how we are delivering our camping ground services. The findings of this review highlighted that we have different operating models across the district, some of which are considered to be outdated and hinder informed decision-making for efficient and effective future service delivery. So in order to be able to propose the best model for delivering our camping ground services, we have some operational efficiencies that we need to carry out and gather enough data to be able to inform our decisions. So the recommended option from the Section 17A review was that we undertake these operational improvements for the next 12 to 18 months and review our position at the end of this period in order to be able to assess the best model to adopt. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Carter. And welcome online. Does anyone have any questions regarding the report? And I'm sure there will be many. Does anyone want to start? Councillor Wards.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Carter. I appreciate, and the team that are joining us, that there has been some work going on behind the scenes. Upon reading this report initially, I thought, well, what have we done? Because you know, there was a lot of questioning went on through the LTP process about undertaking these Section 17A reviews with the hope that we might actually move. So I appreciate that you're signalling 18 months, we need to get our act together and find out a bit more and make some efficiencies that are obviously in the background to some of these recommendations. But I have two questions. One, what expenditure have we budgeted for within the LTP annual plan that I thought we'd set aside to move on? I guess I'm concerned overall that we've put a brake on stuff rather than actually get on, make a decision, and with our hats of rationalisation and trying to find some ratepayer savings, I don't get a sense that that is obvious in this particular report.
I can probably jump in there. I'm not sure what the question is, but I know where you're getting to. I just probably want to reiterate that a Section 17A review, you don't typically do them for services that are operating well or that don't have any issues. So it's not uncommon to do the service review, figure out how the service is operating, and come up with some challenges around lack of information. The obvious one model to fix all the problems doesn't really usually happen. So one of the problems that you have with campgrounds, and I can let Jane expand on this a bit more, is we just can't speed up time. We don't have the information to say, hey, this is the best model, because the operators haven't been asked to collect certain information that would inform that decision. So I appreciate that there's not a clear pathway forward at the moment. In terms of the report, we just can't make recommendations like that without the evidence behind it. I guess council's more than capable of making a decision to go one way or the other, but we can't recommend a model or a way forward if we don't have the evidence to back that up. which is where we're sitting at the moment.
Through your worship, I think management shared exactly that concern, and we did have a meeting with the team a couple of weeks ago. I think, ultimately there's probably has been an underinvestment in our camping grounds. So at the moment, the recommendation around status quo would be probably the best financial thing to do right this minute until we collect that data, and then we'll be able to form better decisions in terms of the performance of camping ground and be able to understand the investment that we are putting into the levels of services and how that equates and whether or not that actually is too high or too low. And I just don't think we're quite there at the moment. It does mean, though, that from an operational point of view, we've got to turn our attention a lot more to the camping grounds and make sure that that any agreements, for one, we put agreements in place, but two, that we are adequately collecting the data, but also making sure that those operators are performing as well.
Thanks. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thanks for that information, Brian. I don't disagree with the conclusions that have come. I suppose I was a bit more disappointed that they had to become the conclusions. Having a look through the reports highlighted a number of compliance issues, and I will have a couple of questions specifically about that with your permission, Your Worship. Uncovered a few, the reviews uncovered a few of those compliance issues that I would have hoped we would have known about operationally. Had we have known about them operationally, then we either wouldn't have done the Section 17A yet until we had that information, or we could have waited until we had it into such a place that we could be getting some solid recommendations. So I was a little bit disappointed about that. A couple of questions here, though, that the report that we've received, so my first one with your permission, Mayor Tracy, it is a much shortened report from the full report which we have had sight of, and there is a detailed report. I've looked at a number of different councils with their Section 17A reviews just to get a bit of a feel for how they should look, what does good look like, and a lot of those are released through into the public forum. Understand that there may be some confidentiality pieces within that, but my first question is, are we able to consider redacting anything that could be commercially sensitive that fits within the Lagoima regulations and release more detail? Because there are some really vital key things and context within the wider report that I think that the public should see. And actually, when I went through, I couldn't see why a lot of that information, if there was a Lagoima request, it would have to be released. So I just wanted to ask if there could be some, as my first question, some consideration for that.
Through you, Your Worship, certainly we can definitely redact. That was one of the considerations, but just to err on the side of caution, we decided not to publicise the report, but we can certainly go through and redact anything that we consider to be sensitive or confidential. Yes.
Can I just ask, Ellie, if you could record that as an action from the meeting? That'd be great. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and Carter, I appreciate that consideration. I want to now just dig, I talked at the start about finding some compliance issues, so I just want to dig a little bit into what the risk might be for us on some of those. Particularly, there's a bit of a sub-recommendation. It's not in recommendation 1.2, but I'm assuming if we adopt 1.2, one of the operational efficiencies was to partially close or to change the way that the Woodville campground was being operated, and that would turn it into a self-contained only. reading through that, and spent a little bit of time reading through the regulations as they were in our papers or in the full report, it does talk about the laundry and rubbish bins. Rubbish bins, pretty easy to solve if we needed to. A couple of quick questions specifically on that, because I think that's a really big call, and that's part of the reason why I think the whole report or more information needs to go out there. Are we able to say that we're about to have a laundromat, which will be 50 metres away from the campground very, very soon in Woodville? Would that count as long as we had signage up telling people where they could do their laundry? And if not, when I looked at the regulations, there didn't appear to be a penalty for not following them. So what I wanted to understand is what risk might we be exposed to if we didn't follow those regulations until we had the full information so we could do a full analysis on our campgrounds.
Through you, Your Worship, perhaps Jane would be better answering that question. Thank you, Jane.
Thanks, Kata. Thanks, Councillor. It's a good question. I don't fully understand what penalties might apply, but I guess the campground regulations are set by the Ministry of Health. So in terms of intentions of that, the regulations, it's around sanitation, I guess with the eating facilities, the cleaning facilities, the cooking facilities, as well as the ablution facilities. That's the intention of putting those regulations in for camping grounds if you are not self-contained and not able to provide those services for yourself. Whether a laundromat down the road 50 metres would assist in terms of making it compliant, I'm not sure, but obviously that site in Woodville was also missing cooking and kitchen facilities and a number of other things as well, which has caused the low score in terms of the regulation compliance. So I'm not fully sure about the laundry facilities. I know obviously the world has changed since 1985, so I suspect a number of camping grounds now have laundry facilities within the towns and laundromat facilities that people can utilise. But I think more concerning is the lack of kitchen facilities for non-self-contained campers at that site.
I've just got one from Brian and then a follow-up from Councillor Gilmore.
Through your worship, and just further to what Jane said, I have asked the team to conduct a risk assessment around the non-compliance. I have some thoughts around that in terms of, these camping grounds have been here, I actually don't know how long, Woodsville. I'm picking since the police station and everything was set up maybe in the early 80s, late 70s. So was there any existing rights sort of things around that as well? But it's something we just need to explore further. I personally think, of course, not any non-compliance, there's a level of risk, but something that hasn't been brought to our attention other than us discovering it ourselves through the review that Jane has done.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. This is my final part. Just very, very quickly, there are some cooking facilities very, very, very close by the camping ground. There's a fantastic barbecue facility just across the road in Fountain Square. I suppose just before I pass over, I just wanted to double check, going back to one of my original questions. Recommendation 1.2 talks about status quo but undertaking operational efficiencies. What I'd just like is an assurance that if we vote for 1.2, that will not automatically mean that the Woodville campground will undertake the change that's been recommended in there without further conversation with us and with the community. So I just want to get that assurance so I can understand which way I'll vote on that recommendation.
If I could just add to, sorry, through you, Mayor Tracy, if I could just add to the risk conversation, I suspect the risk might be you won't have a problem until there's a problem, which is a bit of a funny way to say it, but if let's say you had a coli breakout or just something was linked back to the campground, and the Ministry of Health came in and investigated it, and then saw that you just didn't have cooking facilities or didn't have laundry facilities, what the risk could be is that they might go, oh, if you only don't have one of those things, they might say sort that out. If you have multiple things that aren't there, they probably just would shut it down, I imagine, and until you got those things in place. So that would be the risk, that if the Ministry of Health got involved, did an assessment, that there's a risk that they could just shut the campground down until you made the required changes. I'm not sure if there'd be a penalty, a fine, or anything like that, but I'd say that would be the most significant risk.
So Brian, Councillor Gilmore have that assurance there, and also I'll add the risk assessment back to the actions for this meeting.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, one of the operational efficiencies was to make that large change to Woodville.
Noted in table
Yeah,
2.
through Your Worship, I think all of that will be tied up as part of that risk assessment, understanding what the risks are, understanding what we need to do, and it will be a separate item that comes back to Council should we change the status of it.
Thanks, Brian. Right, just moving next, can I go to Councillor Johns?
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Yes, my comments have largely been covered by Councillor Gilmore, and the response from you, Brian. But particularly, we need to consult or discuss these possible changes with the community, Woodville community, at an early stage, not too late in the process.
Thanks, Councillor Johns, and I take both yourself and Councillor Gilmore your report back to Positively Woodville with us and a bit of an update. And I guess with the Section 17As, have they been shared with the people that are involved in those campgrounds? And if not, I guess before they're made public, they need to also be aware of the report.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, they are obviously aware of the process that we're going through, but we haven't shared the reports or the findings with them.
Thanks. Councillor Chase.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Tracy. Another thing that concerns me is am I getting this correct with some of the other models about relocatable home parks to the Dennevirke campgrounds? Is that something that we are looking at possibly doing, and would that mean that we would have permanent residents in our campgrounds? Is that what that is?
That's the way I interpreted the discussion in the document, but Carter or the team online, if they want to talk more about that, that was definitely something new.
Through your worship. Option 8, really these options were analysed and assessed. Option 8 is just one of the options that we could take, but we're not really, we won't be able to ascertain for sure whether that's the best option or not until further down the line. So all these options that we have here is something we need to come back and reconsider once we have the data to better inform our decisions. I will let Jane make any additions if she has any. Thank you.
Thank you, Kata. Thank you, Councillor. It's discussed in, I guess, in the report on page 62. At this stage, it's undetermined. Some camping grounds, it's a possibility, I guess, within the camping ground legislation to have a relocatable home park, but it requires quite a lot of additional infrastructure. Certainly not making that recommendation at this stage, however.
If we were to consider that kind of model, would that actually be consulted with the community first before we went ahead with the idea? can that be guaranteed?
Sure, any changes to any operating model will have to be consulted with the community. So that's just a process that we have. We will not go and make any changes. So council have to be aware, so yourselves have to be aware of the changes we are making to existing processes, and community have to be consulted with any changes that we are proposing. Thank you.
Thanks, Carter. There's certainly a lot of information needed there. Councillor Peter Weber.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to go back quickly to Woodville. I guess I looked at it and thought, well, what are our goals for Woodville? Like, what's the future? Because if we're going to be taking to, bringing it back a little bit so you can only have self-contained there, what stops them going to Ferry Reserve for free? That place has been humming over there. I've been driving through there quite a bit lately, and that place is really busy at the moment with the summer and the river and stuff. So I just see Woodville really decreasing in numbers. It's our lowest camping ground as it is now. So I guess we need to look at what's the future of the Woodville camping grounds, because I can't see it. I can see why we're doing this, but I can see it just, there'll be no one there eventually and it'll just end up closing. The other thing is the recommendations. How will they be filtered through back to us?
Through your worship. So regular updates to council and to the community development and wellbeing committee as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Peter Weber. And I think there is a link between the two, because Ferry Reserve does have a lot of people there, but it's actually also understanding what happens in winter or in extreme weather events where we do need to make sure that there is no one present there. But really good point. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Tracy. First of all, the 17A reviews that we're getting now, I think this is great. We've got a start point, right? Because it's been 2.5 years when we all started talking about 17As, or looking at getting rid of low-hanging fruit and revitalising different things and having a deep dive into all this. And this is what I think the work that has been carried out. It's very in-depth. There are some big questions from a business point of view. Some of the operating models, yes, as we can see in these reports. But going forward, I think as long as we get, and I think what Councillor Sharon was reflecting to, if we can keep the momentum going, and this is what we need. We don't have a meeting now and then we don't, we need to keep this moving now and make sure we do the consultation affecting like what's going to happen, could happen in Woodville, etc. What could or might, which I wouldn't, but anyhow, at the Dannevirke camping ground. But I think we need to really keep this moving, because if we keep it moving, we will save money in the long term. If we just pontificate, well, we'll end up, we did a report on it, and nothing happened out of it. What I would like, personally, is a schedule of dates that we could get within this month. Next month, January, there's only one day to go. Next month, that we are going to have good feedback, and I think the team on the screen up there have done a good job, because we've got information we didn't have before. And the key one that really shines through, there's no data. And that really surprises me. That really surprises me, because take, for example, the Dannevirke camping ground. It's been there for years. All these camping grounds have been there, but this is where we need to keep living the now. Let's keep it going, keep the momentum going, so we can move forward and make sure we get the best bang for our buck. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Wallace, the timelines that you're looking for, there was timelines referred to in the report. Are you looking for more detail?
Yeah, there are timelines in the report, but I mean, I would like sooner than later. The sooner we get these things, because we've got a big year in front of us, right? If you look at the year coming forward to us, it's And if we can alter those timelines, so be it, you know.
Thanks, Councillor Wallace. We'll get some updates going through the Community Wellbeing and Development Committee. Okay, Councillor Franklin, and then Councillor Long.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I read with quite concern the reports around Carnival Park and the unknowns around Carnival Park. The fact that it isn't an incorporated society, but it has always sat under the local community committee, which originally was a community board. So they do get regular reports from the camp manager, but I was really more concerned that nobody seems to know who owns the assets there. I found that quite bewildering because originally there was a little old cottage on there that was the manager's cottage, and then a beautiful brand new brick house was built, and because Caroline ran that park with it really brilliantly for years and then moved on. So I'd like to know why we don't know who owns them. It just seems quite bizarre to me. I just found the Carnival Park reports really felt like there's nothing wrapped around it to make sure it's safe. That's how I felt, yeah.
Your Worship, Jane, would you like to comment on that, please?
Certainly, thank you. Yes, you're not wrong. There is quite a degree of asset information and ownership information missing at the moment around the Carnival Park facility. We did try and do a bit of a deep dive in there to try and ascertain some records, but it was difficult to find. So that is one of the recommendations that gets looked into a bit further relatively soon. Also, in terms of occupancy and record keeping, a lot of that information wasn't disclosed, and it hasn't been required to be disclosed very regularly. We did actually receive some information, but it was the day after the report was submitted. So, and again, it wasn't super comprehensive. So there's a bit of improvements required there in terms of asset information and record keeping around and record reporting and financial information back to council. That would be helpful for sure.
Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that, Jane. Yes, there's always been that level of the fact is that it's actually a dock reserve as well. So, but all the Wairarapa reserves are treated quite independently. That's one region where they're treated quite independently from right across the country. I don't understand the rationale for that. However, that's why they're allowed dogs, for example, in the park. But I think the thing is the person that would have the most information in here and is absolutely brilliant is Carolyn Donald. And I know she would be only too willing to help with any questioning. She would have had that role for at least, I'm guessing, 10 to 15 years. And did an outstanding job, and regular reports were coming in because I sit as the council representative on Explore Pahia Tour. Those reports were coming in regularly, and if they didn't come, they were asked for. But then where's the recorded record of them? And that therein lies the issue. It's all just a little bit too loose. It's a beautiful facility, and it is well used, but we need to make sure we're compliant, and that's the issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Franklin. I'm picking through this process. You'll have a better system within council to check that these reports are coming in and where the information needs to go, because I hadn't seen too many of those reports either. So I was quite interested to see that they were required for an annual report to council. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Worship. Can I just make a suggestion? I wonder, Carter, whether it would be worthwhile inviting you to an Explore Pahia Tour meeting to explain to the committee that what the processes need to be, what needs to be looked at. But definitely Carolyn, she'll be willing to help out wherever possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Franklin. Councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. It's been touched on, but I think it's important to keep up to date with the operators and lessees of these things. They've got income, they've got livelihood involved, so I think it's really important to keep them involved and keep them up to date. Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Long. Councillor Johns.
Happy to move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Thanks, Councillor Johns. I'll just hold. I'll come back to you in 2 seconds. Councillor Chase, just have one follow-up question.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor Tracy. Some of the other concerns that I did have while reading both the reports was our compliance with the health and safety and risk management obligations. And in many of our meetings that we have had, our health and safety obligations in several of our departments within council has been lacking. So I want to also see within the recommendations of operational improvements that we do see some answers to the health and safety risk management and who's going to be doing it and following that up. Because this isn't the only one that we've seen it in. We haven't been holding our health and safety group meetings and stuff for quite a while. We've had put that on the back burner for some of our stuff because we've got other BAU to do. But seeing this health and safety stuff in both the campgrounds and the swimming pool does concern me, because that is us as council should be doing that stuff. So I would like that to be also incorporated into the table too, please.
So Brian's got one query, and I just, Councillor Chase, are you happy? I have added the risk assessment and that detail to come back to council as an action. Brian.
Through your worship, sorry, Councillor Naima, just asking about, we said those group health and safety meetings haven't been occurring.
Some of the, there was a group, I can't remember it off my head, top of my head right now, but we used to do, you know, the health and safety group meetings where they used to follow. It was in one of the audit and risk hui that we've had, and it was led by human resource team, but they haven't been able to keep up to date with some of that stuff. It was, I will come back, I can get it back to you, but I do recall us saying that it hasn't been regularly updated. Some of our stuff haven't been done because we've had other issues, or we've had to commit our health and safety time to something else. But health and safety issues have been coming through quite a lot in lots of our papers, and it has said in many of our papers that we haven't got the manpower to be able to do some of the mahi that we're required to do.
Through your worship, I think, yeah, you're referring to the Safe Plus audit that we decided not to do this year, but that's always a voluntary scheme through the MW LAS, and we're still carrying through the previous one in terms of those recommendations. So even though the actual group meetings in terms of the Health and Safety Committee have still occurred.
I'm also just going to pass to Councillor Gilmore, who is the Health and Safety Champion for that and reporting to audit and risk. But we, as a council, we also have had some of those site visits where we solely focus on that. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and I think they're very fair comments from Councillor Chase. By the way, we have had the due diligence meetings, and they were absolutely rightly, they were delayed somewhat, so they are now back on, and there certainly has been discussion about the need to continue doing those. I also have a meeting this week, I think it might be tomorrow, from a health and safety perspective, to be having a look at the overall of what's happening with the team. I don't disagree with you that, because health and safety jumped out at me in this report, particularly though in the next report that we're going to be looking at. My expectation though is that the operational efficiencies referred to in the recommendation absolutely will encapsulate the health and safety ones, and the risk register that's been referred to by the Chief Executive. Absolutely, I would be requiring all of those health and safety ones to be put on there, that to come back to us, but actually from an audit and risk perspective as well. So I think they're very fair comments, but I do think that we are on track with what we're looking at for health and safety now.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. Does that give you some comfort, Councillor Chase?
Yes, it does give me some comfort.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Sutherland, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. I think Councillor Wallace touched on it. The the 17A review is very timely for this, for camping grounds. We have chatted about them on and off for 2 or 3 years now, but they have been the poor cousin a bit for a long time with this council. We've had, from both governance and operational situations, we've had various changes of people. We've had the odd touch on various camping grounds individually, but I think it's long overdue that we get a process in place and we get some plans and look at them collectively. So I think it's a great start, and I think there's a mood to move forward on it. But I think we've started well, and now we've got the information. We haven't got all the information we need, but at least we can. But I think everyone knows where they're sitting and what's in front of us, and it's a good start. We haven't done that before for this area, and we have other things to worry us, but I think this is a good start, and I think let's just get on with this one, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Johns.
Yeah, repetition, I guess, yeah, but I happily move the recommendation as 1.1, 1.2, Your Worship.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wallace. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Right, we'll move into the next report, item 9.2, the Section 17A review of swimming pools. Carter.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have Brendan and David to answer any specific questions. We take the report as read. Again, really just to reiterate that the review was done on current services with aquatic services, and the focus was on how we are delivering these services. The findings of the review highlighted that we have a cost-effective model in place and we are doing well. And when we look at the funding ratio of 44:56 in comparison to the generally accepted one in New Zealand, which is 30:70, we're doing well. But the findings also highlighted that, again, in order to be able to propose the best model for our aquatic services, we have some operational improvements we need to do. And we also need enough data to be able to inform our decision. So the recommended option was that we undertake these operational improvements for the next 12 months, and then we'll be in a better position. So we'll review our position at the end of that period, and we will hopefully be in a better position to investigate what operational models we can adopt. Thank you.
Go. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Woods.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I'll be a bit quicker on this one because I think my concerns are similar to what I talked about with the campground. It is really, really clear throughout this report that we need to monitor our swimming pools better. It was really disappointing to learn in the report about the lack of TDC engagement, monitoring and auditing. This is an area, although yes, we are doing relatively well if you look at the amount we put in and the cost per swim, all of that kind of thing. But it is a huge amount of money that is put in directly by ratepayers without the oversight that I think that expenditure would justify. This is the part I certainly had written notes about the health and safety side of it. Some of that monitoring really did jump out at me. We've had an assurance from the Chief Executive that we would be getting that risk report, and I'm sure that the same would go for this. But also, just to close with this one, some of these things that have come through in this report are things that I would expect to be BAU, so to be dealt with from a BAU perspective. It is good that we have learnt that they aren't happening to the standard that they need to be, but it is a large expense to be using consultants to come in and give us recommendations, then to find out that some of that BAU hasn't been done to be able to give us the information we need to be able to make decisions. So, yep, we need to crack on with it. I don't think we have a choice.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. The Chief Executive has got one quick comment.
Although I sort of agree with what you're saying and what's been put in the report, I don't think it's necessarily always been the case. I think there has fluctuated in terms of the amount of time that staff have put into it, and I know Jess McKenzie, when she was there, probably did more, and we've had change of staff that's resulted in less expertises in certain areas. It does concern me around the BCBU responsibilities of pools, and the only thing that I'd highlight is, yes, we could incorporate it in BAU, but every improvement we do adds to already quite a high level of workload to staff. So resourcing, if high risk areas, and I think pools one of them, we need to adequately resource. And that's the other challenge, and even sort of touching on what Councillor Chase said around health and safety. We've got a complex organisation and business with so many different aspects that require quite different skill sets. But in saying that, I'm not proposing that we're coming to you to ask for more resources. What we've talked about as an executive team is looking at operational efficiencies in terms of shifting where the priorities will lie. So Carter's already started work on that to look at how we can incorporate assets, for example. So rather than two teams looking at assets totally different, we put them all under one team with the skill sets involved in it, and then looking around our sort of maintenance around pools, etc. Do we have the right capability within our structure to manage that? So we had a strategic planning day as executive, and certainly picked up some of that as issues, but certainly planning and a lot more of that will come through the annual plan over the next couple of months.
Councillor Wards.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Sutherland reflected that camping grounds were probably the poor cousins, whereas with our discussions over the last few years regarding swimming pools, I think this has been a hot topic of conversation. So, the report, the background to the report that you provided, Carter, for me, provided some really fantastic information that allows us, I think, as we move forward on this, to look at some ways of monitoring. I particularly commend David and Brendan for the analysis on what data you were able to get and how you were able to pitch it against the comparison of, the cost per ratepayer for a swimming pool visit. I mean, this was stuff that, I had no idea we would be able to get down to that level of information. So I'm particularly grateful and commend the whole team for providing us with some benchmarks that we will be able to monitor and use as we go forward. You alluded to it then, Brian, I'll be particularly keen in the annual planning process to examine very closely what budget allocations are being put towards what actions are agreed when it comes to those operational efficiencies. And I concur, Brian, from an operational perspective, I would like to see where the priorities do get shifted to, rather than, because the team have alluded to in the report, the level of expertise that's required to do this well. And I think reputationally, health and safety, compliance, we need to up our game. So in the annual planning process, I'll be having a microscope on particularly this and the camping grounds, because what we allocate financially will be where the rubber hits the road in terms of the emphasis. So huge thank you to the team and the work that's gone on, though.
Thanks, Councillor Wards, and very much noted. Councillor Johns.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Just a couple of things. One is part of the problem, as I see it, is that there are various governing systems or ownership systems in terms of pools. For example, we don't own Y-Splash. Technically, what level of control do we have with regard to Y-Splash? I understand that there has been discussion between Whitesplash and Woodville, for example, I'm not sure about the others, for the provision of, it might be the filtration system and the dosing and provision of lifeguards and or training of lifeguards, but I'm not fully up to speed with where that's at. But I do agree that there needs to be an oversight by council across all the pools. How that's done when we don't own one of them is to be decided, I guess. But one thing I'd like to ask, and I was fascinated by the cost per swim. I remember it was about $12, about eight or 9 years ago, $12 a swim for Whitesplash. But do we have figures for swim figures for Woodville, for example, and the other pools? In our Woodville, for instance, they have it, free for kids. So do they actually count the kids?
Yeah, it's in the detailed report.
I didn't pick that up, but okay. So, but I would like to see a breakdown of cost per swim per pool.
That's in the detailed report.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it was fascinating reading. Yeah.
Thank you.
The other comment I would make is just around Whitesplash. They are very transparent for councillors, and they do send us their minutes and reports regularly as well. Any further questions or comments on that? Councillor Franklin.
The Wimbledon pool sort of piqued my interest and curiosity as to how the heck that's actually compliant with a fence like that around it. Having gone through this council suing us over a pool fence, I feel quite offended that this sits there out in the open, easy to climb. There's even 2 ladders hanging over the sides of the fence for the kids to use. So, that's a huge risk to council, surely. It has to be. Can I ask a quick question? Are there many students at the Wimbledon school? It must be quite a small school, I take it. Does it still exist?
No, the school was closed.
No. So that was the thing in the report. It was suggested that the school could look after it. Well, I'm looking at the school and I'm thinking, no, that's not going to happen. So there's certainly a big question mark around that sitting out in the middle of nowhere, where on Route 52, with it not being safe. So shut it down.
Thanks, Carter. That will be one of the priority conversations with the community, and I guess that's where it comes into highlighting the risks and seeing what they do have in place. Julie Noter will be passing there this afternoon. Councillor Wallace and Councillor Petty-Webber.
Yeah, just reflecting on the Wimbledon pool. That's been there a long time. Yes, the climate of health and safety has changed for the better. I agree with that. But by all means, you need to talk as a transparent council. We will have conversations with that because that does. Mr. Hales out there would be the man, and it is across the road from the Panas school, which is closed, as we all know, or some of us know. But tread lightly.
Thanks, Councillor Walls. It'd be good to understand. I'm not sure whether they have community keys or exactly how that pool does operate. Councillor Petty-Webber and then Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. I know that pool is used quite regularly in the summer, especially if the sea is really bad at Herbertville. Families will take their children to that pool to swim. I didn't realise that we owned it. It was an asset of ours, and yeah, we are quite liable for a few things. It would be sad if it's closed down, but I guess if they got the community, took responsibility for it, and we could vouch for it that was being run properly, that would be all right. The other thing, I don't read the full report. I just sort of briefly looked over it. So pools need to send their water into the lab to get tested. Do we get any? Do we get any figures for that? What comes back, like with the amount of coli and all that sort of thing? Do we have any of that on record?
Through you, Mayor Tracy, I believe we do the testing ourselves by the environmental officer.
Oh, okay.
Brendan could add to that. I'm pretty sure that's what we do. Yeah.
Okay. I just know that when we ran Y Splash a few years ago, it was always sent to the lab, like once a week or once or 2 weeks, something like that. Yeah, but I just didn't see anything in the report. Thank you.
Through your worship, I could look into that further and just get a really good understanding of how that works. Yeah.
I think, thanks, Carter. I'll just write that on an action, because if you can clarify that, because if it's not coming through council, then actually that's part of our responsibility to understand that. That would be great. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to the team. Were Bush Aquatic Trusts involved at all in this 17A review? Were they actually involved as a committee?
Through your worship, Brendan, I believe Brendan has had some communication with the Bush Aquatic Trusts. Brendan?
Yes, I did fairly late in the piece, because originally we were considering the current pools as the service delivery, but obviously we need to consider the future with the new pool. So I didn't meet with them, but I have been in touch with Louise, Louise Powick, who's on that trust, been there for quite some time. Yeah, so there has been contact and some feedback from them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Franklin. Are there any further questions? I think it's there. Yeah, the Chief Executive's got one comment.
Through your worship, I think one of the plans that we do need to look at this is that currently we do have some reasonably good operators that are volunteering for it, and one thing that I've talked about with the team as well, succession planning. If we were to get another good operator to replace, say, the Woodville and the Ekatahuna as examples, would the status quo be still the best model, and how much of that risk would then transfer to council? And I think that's when we need to have a plan in place and more work done in the space to understand what a future model would be that would help manage some of that risk. And at the moment, because these pools are raising funds, they are the cheapest option, but that may not always be the case. And I think will come back to this table to then decide based on the risk and the investment required to cover the risk. That's when I think some more conversations will need to happen around pools. But while we do have good operators, we would be, I guess, amiss to change anything too drastically, while they are reasonably cost effective, because pools will just become more and more expensive to run, in my personal view. So I think there's a lot more work needs to be put in around some sort of pool type plan that goes beyond the sort of next 12 months.
Thanks, Brian. We have the recommendation on page 35, 1.1 and 1.2. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Sutherland. Can we have somebody second that? Councillor Petty-Weber. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Carter, for that report. And to exist, there is a lot of information that we weren't aware of. It is incredibly valuable, and thank you very, very much for bringing that to light and all together in one document. It is a great document, so we look forward to taking it forward. Thank you.
Can I just, through you,
Absolutely.
Mayor Tracy, just have a bit of a wrap up from Exist's point of view. I know sometimes these reports can be a little bit confronting, but just peace of mind for the elected members that it's not uncommon, especially in a council your size, where you've got a really big district, a small staff, where the focus gets pulled, depending where it gets pulled. So I think I agree with the councillors and the sentiments that have come through, that you are in a really good position now. So just take that away as a peace of mind that it's not all doom and gloom.
Thank you for that. Brendan, you had a comment as well.
I think, just to reiterate what Brian just said, that at the moment you're relying on volunteers across the pools, and while they've got the passion and the energy and enthusiasm, if that changes at all, it just increases your risk on the delivery of the model. But yeah, I think similar to what Dav has just said, you've got a good starting point now to take things further. In 12 months' time, you'll be able to sit down and say, right, what is our best option for both probably camping grounds and the pools? So, been nice working on this piece of work with you.
Thank you for that. And look, there wouldn't be anyone in this room that doesn't know the commitment level and the expertise that those volunteers do have, and they really are incredibly passionate about the community, but actually swimming as well. It takes a lot of work to open those up for the public. So thank you very, very much for your contribution to that, and we look forward to the next stage. Kia ora. With that, councillors, we may adjourn for 15 minutes. We'll come back at 10:45 and just have a wee break. Thank you. Right, thank you. Item 9.3, page 41, the adoption of schedule of meetings for 2025. I'll pass over to you, Ali.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mayor and Councillors, I'm presenting the adoption of the adoption of schedule of meetings for the remainder of this 2025 calendar year. So I placed on the agenda a report that includes a proposed schedule of meeting, and noting that all the meetings that were scheduled are only up until the beginning of October, because of course this council cannot set meetings that will be set by the new council after the elections. So happy to take any questions or explain anything if required.
Thanks, Ali. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Thanks, Ali, for the comprehensive report. So it's related. It's not. I'm happy with it as it sits. I suppose my request with this is if we do adopt this meeting schedule, is when it comes to workshops, which we are likely to be having, jumping into a lot of workshops for our annual plan and potentially local water done well, that all attempts are made to have a workshop on the same day as a committee meeting or an already scheduled meeting. As we went into the long-term plan, we did have some that fell outside of that. According to the data, it was less than I remembered, so most of them were on those days. But I just asked for that commitment where is possible for us that are travelling, that if we have a workshop, they're scheduled in when we're already in Dannevirke.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. We'll certainly be trying with that. Just noting with local water done well, there may be the need for some extraordinary meetings given the speed that is required at. Okay, thank you. Is there anything further? No, thanks for your work on that, Ali. The recommendation 1.1 and 1.4 on page 41, can I have somebody move that? Councillor Wallace, and seconded Councillor Wards. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Right, we'll move to item 9.4, request for information under the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act. Ali.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll take the report as read. It's presenting data on the request for information that we've received since our last report on this matter.
Councillor Gilmore.
Happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor Johns. The recommendation 1.1 on page 51. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you, councillors. And now could I have it? That brings us to the conclusion. Sorry, Councillor Sutherland.
Sorry, back. I knew I had a thought in mind about Ali's schedule. Microphone. I had just something I had in mind and I forgot to bring it up as we're going through there. In the last year and the year before, we did have some discussions about July, that we have the LGNZ conference during that, and that used to be a month where we avoided some meetings to give us a breathing space, and also last year I think with the long-term plan stuff, we were a bit stressed, not only us but staff as well, and we may have talked about it more over a coffee than anywhere else, but obviously there's no changes to the July schedule, but I'm just wondering and I'm not sure the July schedule, that's changed by workload, and I'm not sure whether it's changed since this triennium, whether or not, but it's just a comment really. I'm not suggesting we bail out, but it has been discussed a little bit.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. And I do note that many councils don't meet in July, and we have successfully managed to do that once or twice, but Ellie, is that a possibility with the workload that we've got? It does give councillors a good break and staff the chance to get a clean run at some work.
It all depends on the work program. We have cancelled committee meetings when there's been not many items to bring before the council, so it's always a possibility to cancel meetings. The local government conference this year doesn't clash with any of our council meetings. In previous years we've cancelled meetings because the conference was on, but this year the timing's back to July and not in a council meeting week.
We'll commit to look at the amount of business that we've got and have a discussion close to that time. Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Right, moving the late item. No, we're just waiting on that late item. So the Chief Advisor is on his way. If we perhaps move to portfolio reports and run through the rest of the items, and then we'll see if he's arrived with that item. Okay, portfolio reports. Does anyone have anything to report? Councillor Wards, did you wish to report on the Akatio ratepayers meeting?
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for the reminder. I was trying to think if we've spoken since. So just a quick update. The annual Akatio Ratepayers Association met on the 2nd of January. Grateful to have Mayor Tracy there, who gave the community a bit of an update, an overview of everything that had been going on. The elephant in the room was water. And so based on the management report that Hamish and the team had provided us all with in November, or December, I was able to give them a few facts and figures around how the treatment situation worked, and that with 57 connections, the treatment plant worked fine, but with the surge in population between Christmas and New Year, I guess someone was listening, and the weather was not encouraging for lots of people to descend on Akatio. So we got through very well. I did speak with the owner of the property on which our treatment plant sits, and he indicated that he'd met with Mike prior. So I think the message that I took away from that was new relationships and new connections will be very valuable out there. Tracy and I both indicated to them the financial investment that's going to be made out there over the next in the next annual plan, and we didn't receive any questions other than a question from a couple of them regarding how were we going to enforce what hadn't been enforced in our bylaws around the provision of the requirement for tanks on each property. That one didn't get answered, although some community members said, look, it's a bit of council and it's a bit of us, and long term that's pretty much where it's going to have to sit. So anything else, Tracy? I think that was probably the nub of the...
I think it was just keeping those communication channels going. They are very good. They send us our minutes. And I think a lot of the water will come up through the infrastructure committee meeting, and we certainly talk to them about that. So well summed up, and always a well-attended, well-organised meeting. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, with any new build in Akatea, is there a requirement from the council to force a water tank on that property?
Through your worship, yes, certainly if it's a bylaw, then as part of the consenting process, they would ensure that happens. It's probably easier for new builds than those that are existing.
Councillor Wards.
I can just add to that, Councillor Long, that the recent new builds have all complied with that. Some of the more historic members of the community admitted that, way back then there was a few handshakes went on and a few pipes got put in, and so certainly from from a few years ago with any new builds that I've noticed, they've been compliant with that. We've just got a raft of connections that have happened, because other little units have been put on that connection, and or people have said, no, council can look after us, and off we go.
Thank you, Councillor Petey Webber.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. On Saturday, Steve Wallace and I attended Makotoko for the can't even say it. The original gates got put back in for the church. It was quite a good morning. There was probably about 10 to 15, maybe 15 Linton soldiers there, plus a group of locals who came in for the event. It's really securing the history. For anyone who moves into that area, they'll know that there was a church on Church Road. And now that the gates are looking really, they've been all done up, plus the original fence has been straightened out and put back into place. So it's really securing the future so people know what the history was. And there's also information boards about the church that used to be there and about how it is at Linton now, Army Camp. So yeah, it was a really good morning had by all. I don't know if Steve wants to add anything to that. Steve?
Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, it was a great occasion, actually, the rededication of the gates to the church that was there. If you ever go out there, it's just around the corner from the Makotoko, or the Black Dog. It's just a few hundred metres up there. You'll see the gates, you'll see the history, and I was quite touched by the fact that most people went there to pray before they went to war. So if you can imagine it, some of those people never came back. And all those people, Mayor Tracy and I went over to Linton and saw the stained glass window, and in the stained glass window, all the people that lost their lives had fallen. So, yeah, it is really good to see this. And as one of the locals pointed out to me, on the gates, if you can imagine when you latch it, then this was New Zealand hardwood. It had kind of cut in. So that's how much time, and that gates were open and closed. So if you do get the chance, and the work that the locals have done out there, and we also, we went back to the hall, which is where the Norsewood Anzac stuff has been, the original stuff's been kept. That's on the wall now. And we were very pleased to see, and they said, thank you, come and have a look at the new toilets. So which our community board granted money for that. So, but all in all, it was, as Erin has said, a great respect.
Thanks, Councillor Wallace and Councillor Petey Webber for attending that. When Councillor Wallace and I did go out to Linton military base to have a look at the original church, it really hits home the generosity and the gift of the community of Makotoko, but actually how much that is appreciated and the way in which the military treat that, use that, have restored that, and the stained glass windows certainly are significant. I will and have spoken to the 1st Battalion about a visit out there, both to see their museum, but actually I think it would be very nice for everyone to have a visit to St Martin's as well. So I look forward to going out and seeing the gates. Thank you very much for that. That's great. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have an item of to bring up, and I completely forgot until you started talking about that event. So on Saturday we saw the first sod turning, thanks to Mayor Tracy, for the new ambulance station in Pahiatua, which has caused quite a bit of angst in the community over the years, with the struggle to raise the funds and then the waiting game when St John had them all in pecking order to be done. And then finally there was a breakthrough, and so they started work on Monday as promised. Graham went and actually spoke to them yesterday because he's offered to mow the strip behind the station and the fence. They did discover too, by the way, that the section fence, the fencing off of it's actually not within the, there's a metre that's in the wrong property, but that's that metre that they haven't touched. So obviously when the school fence was put up, it was put up in the wrong place. So, but they've all had a chat about it and agreed to, Graham will mow it for them when he goes through to do the one up the side of the kindergarten. But it was really, the thing that was disappointing on Saturday from my personal perspective was the few people who did make the effort to turn up. After all the brouhaha in the community and all the social media interaction and abuse, where were they? It was good to see Brian Hobson, who was probably the main initiator of most of the conversations, turn up and take a video of it for us, which I've seen it now, it's looking really good. So, yeah, so we're finally on track. So what I've done as a follow-up, I've invited Gareth Collings, who is the area ops manager for St John's for the Manawatu region. He's going to come to our community development and wellbeing meeting next week just to give us an update on where they're at in terms of the service, and I have asked for him to pay particular attention to how this is going to impact on Woodville. So the deadline for the building to be finished is the end of August, so at that time then the station will move back to Pahiatua, which is going to leave Woodville people feeling like we felt when we lost ours. So I think it's really important with having Scott and Peter on the council that they are aware so they can keep the community informed. I think it's really important because we've gone without it. We know what it's like to go without it. So, so no, it was good. And the marae hosted us a morning tea and had enough there to feed the entire Russian army, as they do, bless them. And then, of course, we had the follow-up of the collapse of one of our trees in the beautiful big old, apparently it's a beech tree. Somebody told us on the night, it was dark, we were told it was a totara. It's not a totara, it's a beech tree. So a third of it collapsed, and I have really asked quite seriously for it to be inspected because the integrity of that tree has been really compromised. When you look down into where the branches fell off, and they fell off onto the intersection, which, fortunately after saw what happened up north at the weekend, it was lucky there was nobody around at that hour of the night. But the remainder would probably go that way. So this lot would fall across to where the Westpac building is, which would be right on the highway, if anything did happen. But it looks to me, I don't know much about trees, but it looks like it might be rotted right through. So there's also quite a uprising against we're only assessing it so that we have an excuse to take it out. But that's just quite often the reaction of people who for want of a better word, are tree huggers. And I understand their concerns, because that tree, we've dated it. We did have one person came and said, I tried counting the rings, but I couldn't really count as many. And Graham said, you don't count the rings of a branch, it's the trunk. And the trunk, of course, is still there. These branches have come off the trunk. So, but looking back through history, I found a photograph of the Seg Coal flagpole when it was installed in 1901. And you can see along the block, you can see the saplings, the two saplings at the end of that block in the photograph. So it's between 120 and 130 years old, that tree. So, but yeah, it'll be sad to lose it, but I think it's a health and safety risk, in my opinion. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Franklin. It'd be good to see a report just on that whole block of trees, if they're all reaching that age, just what condition they are in and what actions need to be taken. So thank you for your work on that. And also, councillors, it was acknowledged at the when we turned the sod, the work of Councillor Franklin and Councillor Gilmore in getting some action there. So thank you very much for that as well. Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. I was just going to bring up myself and Mayor Tracy and Brian and Peter went to the first meeting of local water well done in Masterton last night, or this afternoon. At fairly short notice, and there's a really high pressured program of meetings at least once a week for the next 6 weeks probably. And it's to try and get a result and a conclusion in time for people to do their public consultation and to wrap around South Wairarapa, I think it is, their long-term plan. So there's a lot of pressure on it. But I just wanted to say, that Mayor Tracy was voted in unanimously as the chair of that group, which was quite good. So she'll be chairing that advisory group of all the councils. Peter here's got quite a big role in that in respect of the financial side of it. He's quite a valuable part of this advisory group. But But we are kind of, you might have thought we may be a bit the poor cousins tacked onto the end of this, but it was exactly the opposite, really. I think there was a lot of respect and a lot of welcoming from the group for us, for Brian and Tracy and myself and Peter. So that's not without some challenges from councillors and some of the other councillors going forward, but just to let you know, it's underway. It's going to be quite stressful, and this has got to come back to our council. But Mayor Tracy is running the cutter, which is great actually, and Peter is a valuable asset to the financial work done in behind it. So just we'll watch that space going forward, Mayor Tracy. And I just wanted to pass on. I didn't think you really said it was congratulations. I think it's going to be quite a challenging position to have, because there will be some different views about things of this going forward, but it's going to have to happen. So
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. And yes, there is some incredibly tight timeframes, and we did talk yesterday around making sure that councillors were kept informed of that as we moved along, getting in preparation for the public consultations as well. So very, very tight timeframes, and not set by us. They are set by central government. Right. Is there any other portfolio reports from people? Okay, mayoral matters, for me, I just did have the advisory oversight group, so that's fine. Councillor Sutherland's touched that off. And Peter, if we move now into the item that is not the late item onto the agenda. Now, Peter, do you have a piece? Okay, thank you. Okay. Sorry, Council, I'm just going to adjourn the meeting if we can for 5 minutes so that everybody can have a copy of this, and I can work out whether we can actually get this up so that members of the public might be able to see this as well. So we'll just adjourn for 5 minutes while we get those copies. Right, thank you, councillors, and thank you, Peter, for preparing this. Councillors have taken the time to have a read of the item that wasn't on the agenda, the appointment of representatives to the Local Waters Done Well Wairarapa Tararua Advisory Oversight Committee. Because we have been unable to get this up on screen, I'll ask you, Peter, if you could, to please go through this comprehensively so that those watching online will have a good understanding of why this paper has been late and the decision that is required. Thank you.
I presume that's how you switch it on. The meeting that we had last night indicated that we needed to get some approvals from each council to ensure that there was sufficient scope for the representatives on that committee to be able to push forward and develop a consultation document over the next 2 weeks. That's the kind of time frame that we've got. And the first meeting was set up only a week or so back. The actual documents only went out on Friday. So we're under that sort of time frame in terms of getting this wrapped up. Once we're through this to the point where we've got a reasonable consultation document that both covers the legal requirements, the minimum legal requirements, and the messages that we want to put in front of our community to consider, we will be able to work through the actual compliance with developing a joint water service delivery plan or a standalone business unit within council. Those are the two options that we determined before Christmas at council. Much like us, the other councils in the Wairarapa have also concluded to the same point in terms of their consultations. That means that we need to now collaborate quite closely in coming up with common language in the communication document that is, well, the consultation document that we have to adopt. And of course, then we can stand back and answer the community questions. We know that there's a huge amount of content that we've developed behind it. That's why we had such a huge report in December on this. So there's plenty of material for people to actually seek understanding and answers. That's why one of the questions that I've got on here, just to confirm our position on stormwater, that's in particular a matter that has to be consulted on one way or the other. And in the consultation document, we'll have to explain why it is that we have fallen where we have. And that ultimately is always, the stormwater is always going to be a broad requirement and responsibility of council. The question is who is going to actually operate the stormwater, maintain it, and whether that will be contracted out, just like we do now, to a Tararua Alliance type model, or whether it ends up being the responsibility of the new council organisation, if that's the way we go, and whether the assets and liabilities are also transferred across, which are the distinguishable assets and liabilities for stormwater. The reason why stormwater is so tricky, just as an aside, is because part of our roading system is our curb and channeling, and it fulfills a lot of that stormwater drainage function. So they become blended, so it becomes very difficult to take central management away from councils. That's why the legislation says stormwater is always going to be a responsibility of council. It's now what structure and how that's structured as to how that's going to be delivered. So we've got time to consult on that. In terms of the representation, way back in July last year, we established a joint committee of the councils in the Wairarapa and Tararua. Mayor Tracy, you agreed to have her on that committee. Its terms of reference were fulfilled essentially as at the decision points of our councils in November and December for the Wairarapa Tararua. So it seemed likely that we still needed to have that great governance input. However, the terms of reference needed to change. How it's going to function needed to recognise now the speed of what we are now having to comply with to get this across the line. The reason why we are under such pressure is that it's an election year for local government. It's a big decision what we come up with. We really want to try to keep that outside the electioneering period, the 3 months prior to the election. That's beginning of July, so that means by 30 June. There's merit in doing that anyway because we have to adopt our annual plan and any effects that these decisions might have over the coming few months on budgets, because there's a budgetary issue around Three Waters. If we do choose to establish something, there's going to be establishment costs. So all of these things, the timelines work backwards from essentially 30 June as the optimal date. That means we need to have special decisions at key points in time. We need to make sure we give ourselves enough leeway if something goes wrong. So at any point across the whole country, any council might not like what they are doing with other councils. And so that really means that you have to roll on a dime, or what's the term? You have to react very quickly to that. So the sooner we get this consultation out, the sooner we can have our hearings, see what our public think, and if it lands differently to what our recommendation is, in terms of our preferred option being a YT model, then we need a bit of time still to work through what our options will be thereafter. So that's some of the limits. So I do apologise, this is why this paper cannot wait till February, end of February, because that will be the date that we will be hopefully bringing a consultation to you for your consideration. So we're kind of trapped if we don't bring this forward.
Thanks for that, Peter. Does anyone have any questions for him? Councillor Wards.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Peter. Just a question probably around the terms of reference of the advisory oversight group. Councillor Sutherland alluded to the fact that Your Worship has been nominated as the chair. Under the terms of reference of the committee, I just want to try and understand, will the chair, as our mayor, be conflicted, and would the terms of reference require her to have a casting vote if it ever came to that? I want to make sure that Tararua's two representatives can represent the Tararua while acknowledging that obviously the chair has some oversight role for everyone. So terms of reference developed for that committee, Peter?
Yeah, so perhaps I should read out, because that's not in front of you at the moment, what the objectives are. And this was a draft that was only presented yesterday to the committee. But I'll read it out. The objectives are for the councils to continue to work closely, collaboratively and successfully to develop and plan a joint water services delivery plan that meet each council's needs and objectives for their respective communities. To facilitate the council making decisions in a timely manner, to ensure joint arrangements can progress in a timely way to meet the requirements for submissions of the Joint Water Services Delivery Plan and other requirements under the Local Government Act. to enable councils to consider how they would operate together in a way that facilitates an effective and efficient use of council's resources, providing optimal benefit to the parties' ratepayers, so that the ratepayers are considered as part of this. And then it's the relationship principles around collaboratively working together in good faith, ensuring communication is open, proactive, transparent, inclusive, avoiding surprises, making every effort to understand the other council's needs and objectives for joint arrangements, and make all reasonable endeavours to ensure the joint arrangements meet such needs and objectives. Raise any issues that arise in connection with this agreement at the earliest opportunity for joint resolution, and resolve disagreements between them, the members, promptly and amicably. Apply courtesy, interest, clear and consistent communication, consult with other councils. So that's broadly, and consult with other councils before making public comment. That's probably the hardest one, because we all have views.
Thank you, Councillor.
This is the committee responsibilities. And by the way, I left out one key word in the heading, which was the G stands for Governance Committee. Hamish kindly pointed that out.
Thanks. Councillor Chase.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Peter, for your report. I did read that there's 2 members plus the iwi reps. Is that from every council, or so?
The iwi representatives are from Ngāti Kahungunu and from Rangitāne. They are jointly, so it's 1 rep from each, and I did check in yesterday with those representatives of how they report back to make sure that Tamaki Rua was covered, and that is an arrangement that they have made with each other.
Can I do a follow-up? Okay, follow up from that. A lot of your objectives that you did just make us aware of, none of it actually has anything to do with any concerns that iwi has in this whole plan, and how they will be addressed.
So, do you wish to?
You're welcome to answer this, Peter, but the iwi have sat there through all the conversations with Wairarapa Tararua and individually with the other councils as they've gone through this process. They do report back. Brian and then Peter.
Through your worship, they will be signatories on those terms of reference. I note that they may need to report back to their respective boards on that as well, so there might be some feedback that comes through that as well, through those representatives.
Peter, did you have anything to add?
Oh, just in feedback from the 2 representatives that have been there, that they have, they're very appreciative of this process. They've actually think that this has gone quite well, because they've been there from the start, and that's been a big difference with that and how other councils have operated across the country, as far as I'm aware.
Councillor Chase.
Am I allowed to know who those 2 iwi reps are?
Joe Hayes from Rangitāne and Robin Patangaroa from Ngāti Kahungunu. And I did speak individually yesterday to how they were relaying and working together just to get peace of mind for myself. Right. Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. And just following Nye's comments, and they discussed this yesterday, and they have both full voting rights in the committee. So they're part of the committee, and they'll be have voting right to any decisions now. So, yeah.
Right. If there's no further questions, because the public can't see this paper, I am going to run through the recommendations, all 9 of them, before we take the vote. So no further questions. Can I just get you to turn your mic? Thank you, Peter. Okay, so the recommendations 1.1, that the report from the Chief Advisor dated 29 January 2025 concerning the appointment of representatives to the Local Waters Done Well Wairarapa Tararua Advisory Oversight Committee be received. 1.2, that the Council receives the report. 1.3, notes that Council is making use of the alternative decision making in consultation arrangements provided in the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Act 2024. 1.4 notes that the Local Government Water Services Bill, which will establish the enduring settings for the new water system, including the economic and regulatory oversight functions, has been introduced into Parliament. 1.5 notes that the three Wairarapa District Councils of Masterton, Carterton and South Wairarapa and Tararua District Council have agreed to consult their communities on the Wairarapa plus Tararua, known as Y plus T, water services delivery option alongside their enhanced status quo options. 1.6 confirm that Tararua District Council membership of the Advisory Oversight Group be the Mayor and the Chair of the Infrastructure and Climate Change Emergency Committee. And 1.7, to delegate to the Tararua members of the Advisory Oversight Group to develop a draft consultation document for the Wairarapa plus Tararua Water Services delivery option for later adoption by Council. 1.8 agrees that the Wairarapa plus Tararua Water Services delivery model will be a Water Services Council controlled organisation. And 1.9 agrees to progress the Wairarapa plus Tararua Water Services delivery option to include stormwater. Can I have a mover for those recommendations? Moved Councillor Wallace, seconded Councillor Johns. All those in favour please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you for your work on that, Peter, and within the Wairarapa Tararua group as well, who acknowledge the heavy workload within that group at the moment for all of the advisors and people taking part. Thank you. Okay. Right, that was the last item. We'll move into public excluded. If I could have somebody move, please, that we move into public excluded. Moved Councillor Chase, seconded Councillor Petty-Webber. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you, and thank you for joining online with us today. Right. Okay, thank you, councillors, and thank you for the meeting today. It has been a learning curve with the technology. I think we'll get some of those finer points on getting things on screens, and one day I might get motions up there so that people can see. But I think it's gone very well. I'll watch the recording just to check how loud and how well that we can hear on that, but it's been a good meeting in the new venue. So thank you very, very much, and I'll close us with our district whakatawaki. Let the winds of the Ruahine and Tararua give you strength. Let the waters of the Manawatu nourish you, for we are the pounamu of Te Tāpiri Nui o Whātonga. Kia ora.